on BBC Radio Scotland.
I'm Bill Whiteford. The Westminster government has agreed to suspend the latest round of licensing for shale gas, effectively bringing forward the devolution of fracking, which was promised in the Smith Commission report. Holyrood has already announced a moratorium on the process while its safety is assessed. Well, joining me now is Tom Greatrix, MP, the Shadow Energy Minister. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Are you welcoming this?
Yeah, I'm pleased. I mean, it's slightly frustrating that the government didn't do this when I tabled an amendment to do this in the infrastructure bill just last month, and at that point they voted against it. But I'm glad they've seen sense, because given that the Smith agreement included the devolution of licensing, it would seem odd then to proceed with awarding licences in Scotland when that's going to be devolved, because I think it's quite right that following the Smith Commission findings that licensing is something which the Scottish Government have control over in the future.
Yeah, it's a bit puzzling to me though. I can't quite see what Labour's policy on this is. Are you in favour of fracking? Because you certainly abstained on the moratorium that was proposed by SNP at Westminster, and yet there is going to be a moratorium in Scotland, and you want this to be devolved.
Well, no, I'll take you through this step by step. There wasn't an SNP proposal for moratorium at Westminster, firstly. That was proposed by a number of members from different parties. At the same time, we had a proposal, an amendment, which was to introduce 13 strict safeguards before any fracking can happen. That was something which, because they knew they were going to lose the vote, the UK government accepted, so those were put into the law, and that was better, in our judgment, than an 18-month moratorium with no conditions attached. And at that point, the Scottish Government were saying they didn't have the power to do anything, including, Mike, we were on your programme on that Monday. 2 days later, of course, they announced what we knew they could do if they wished to, which was to use the planning and permitting powers, which are devolved and always have been devolved, and as an effective veto to stop fracking until while they consider a number of different factors.
So but to go back to this specific issue today,
yep.
You're welcoming the fact that the Westminster government will not push ahead with these licensing, and that devolves it to a Scottish government that you know is going to stop it because they've got a moratorium. So you're welcoming that, but at the same time, you're in favour of drilling, fracking south of the border, including in national parks.
No, we're not. No.
Right, but it's going to go. It's going to go ahead south of the border, but not in Scotland.
No, we the amendment that we secured that the government accepted because they knew they were going to lose a vote included protection for from fracking happening in national parks and a range of other conditions, and we succeeded in getting those into the law. Our position is very clear that the regulation has to be right, the monitoring has to be comprehensive, and we have to make sure there's local consent before anything can happen, and those things need to be put in place. And in relation in Scotland, as you know, the planning is already devolved, always been devolved. It's an effective veto that the Scottish Government have always had. Having a licence doesn't give you the power to do anything in relation to any exploratory drilling or any extraction at all, but it would cause confusion to have licences being awarded in Scotland. There are only 3 pedal licences from the last round, but the 14th licensing round, having licences awarded in Scotland, but then of course nothing could then happen. It makes much more sense for that to be coherent and all within the control of the Scottish Government and for them to make their decisions. But in relation to the rest of the UK, in relation to England, our position has been and continues to be that we have to make sure that the regulation is right before anything can then be considered.
But you're not in principle against fracking?
We're not in principle against exploring whether or not, in the context of the lack of gas that we have from our own shores now and the amount that we import, which is going up year on year, and the amount of gas we use for heating, because this isn't just about electricity supply, that we should see whether or not anything is possible. But
because your leader in Scotland, Jim Murphy, appears to be against it.
Yeah, because...
so he doesn't want fracking, but you do?
No, Bill, no. The position is exactly the same, which is that the regulation has to be completely robust, the monitoring has to be comprehensive, and there has to be local consent. Now, planning is and always has been devolved, and we have an additional policy in Scotland in relation to ensuring that with all those conditions are met, then any potential application in the future would need to have the endorsement of local communities as the final arbiter on any application. But there's not likely to be anything happening anytime soon in any case. I think it's vitally important, though, that there's coherence about this, because this is something which the Scottish Government have always been able to block if they so chose. But there was confusion around how could licences be awarded and what would that then entail, and that's why I pushed the amendment previously, which the government voted against but have now effectively accepted, which is that in line with the Smith Agreement, the licensing should be properly devolved, so no licences in Scotland should be awarded from the 14th licensing round, which was launched last year. I think that's the right thing to do, because then it makes it very clear and coherent for everybody to understand that whether or not anything happens in Scotland, it's up to the Scottish Government, and that's exactly right, because it's in line with what all parties agreed in the Smith Agreement, and also it's consistent with what predated the Smith Agreement, which was that the devolution already existed for planning and for all the environmental permitting associating with any recovery of unconventional gas, be that shale gas or coalbed methane.
Tom Greatrex, MP, thanks very much. Do tell me what you think, 802.